Welcome back to Bookish Dives. For those of you who've joined us on a few dives now, you know we love to unpack the kind of books that, well, genuinely shift your perspective. Today, we're diving into a true classic, Good to Great, Why Some Companies Make the Leap and Others Don't, by Jim Collins. And this isn't just, a standard business book. It's a really profound study that challenges our assumptions about what separates the merely good from the truly exceptional. With insights applicable to any organization, maybe even your own personal goals.
That's right. The central question Collins and his research team set out to answer was both simple and profound. Can a good company become a truly great company? And if so, how?
Right.
And maybe even more importantly, can this sort of disease of just being good actually be cured? As we'll see, their findings often fly in the face of conventional wisdom. They offer a rigorous, data-backed roadmap that, well, many might find surprising.
So get ready to challenge those long-held beliefs, uncover some truly unexpected truths, and gain a real shortcut to understanding the anatomy of enduring greatness. Let's get into it. The entire Good to Great project actually kicked off with a direct challenge to Jim Collins himself. He'd already studied companies that seemed, born great, like those founded by David Packard or George Merck. But a critic pushed him. What about the vast majority of companies that are simply good? Can they actually make that leap to greatness?
Exactly. And that question sparked this monumental 5-year research effort. I mean, imagine digging through thousands of articles, generating mountains of interview transcripts, and meticulously coding just an immense amount of data.
Yeah.
The goal was to find companies that not only transition from good to great results, but crucially, sustain that greatness for at least 15 years. It was a really rigorous, almost exhaustive process.
And what they found was just astounding, wasn't it?
It really was.
These good to great companies achieved cumulative stock returns 6.9 times the general market in the 15 years after their transition. To put that in perspective, a dollar invested in a mutual fund of these companies back in 1965 would have multiplied 471 times by the year 2000.
Yeah.
Compare that to just a 56-fold increase in the general market. That's staggering.
That's a huge difference.
And what's wild is that many of these companies weren't in, hot industries. Walgreens, a drugstore chain, actually outperformed Intel, GE, Coca-Cola during their transition periods.
It really forces you to question that idea that you need to be in a glamorous sector to get exceptional results. And what truly stands out from their research approach, I think, is their focus on what wasn't there.
Right.
They didn't just look for common traits in the great companies. They also looked at what was absent from their transformation and what was present in the comparison companies, the ones that failed to make the leap. And that really helped them cut through the noise and debunk a lot of popular myths.
Okay, so prepare to rethink some things. Before we dive into what these great companies did do, let's shatter some of those widely held beliefs about what drives greatness. Because Collins' research shows many of our assumptions are, well, simply wrong. What's the first big surprise they uncovered?
Well, one of the most counterintuitive findings was definitely about leadership. We often celebrate the larger-than-life, the celebrity CEO, the charismatic visionary.
The savior CEO, yeah.
Exactly. But the study found that 10 of the 11 good-to-great CEOs came from inside the company. They weren't outside saviors brought in. In fact, the comparison companies, the ones that didn't make the leap, they tried outside CEOs 6 times more often. It just wasn't about the rock star leader.
Okay, so the celebrity CEO is out. What else? What flies in the face of conventional wisdom? I guess executive compensation, big bonuses, stock options, that stuff must be key, right?
Yeah. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But nope, there was no systematic link found between specific forms of executive compensation and actually making the leap. It wasn't about how you paid them, it was about who you had leading in the first place.
Interesting.
Also, strategy alone didn't differentiate them. Both the good to great and the comparison companies had well-defined strategies. So it wasn't the plan itself, but something else. Maybe about execution or focus.
Okay. And what about technology? We're always told you need to be first. You need cutting-edge tech.
Yeah, another myth debunked. Technology can accelerate a transformation, definitely, but it can't cause it. It's a tool, not the spark. And forget about grand programs or killer innovations or these miracle moments people talk about.
Right.
The transformations were often quiet, deliberate processes, almost invisible from the outside until much, much later. And like we just touched on, industry type didn't matter. Greatness is not just a function of circumstance. These findings really force you to reconsider what truly matters.
That's a lot to take in. It really makes you rethink so many business cliches. So, okay, if it's not the celebrity CEO riding in on a white horse, what kind of leaders do make the leap?
That brings us to what Collins calls level 5 leadership. These are individuals who blend extreme personal humility with intense professional will. They're often quiet, understated, almost invisible, but they possess this unwavering resolve to do what's best for the company, no matter how difficult.
Can you give us an example? Who kind of embodies this paradox?
Yeah, think of Darwin Smith at Kimberly-Clark. He was this mild-mannered in-house lawyer. Apparently, he even initially doubted his own qualifications for CEO. Yet he transformed a frankly stodgy paper company into the world leader in consumer paper products.
Wow.
Get this, 2 months into a CEO tenure, he was diagnosed with cancer. Yet he worked his full schedule while commuting weekly for radiation treatment. And he made maybe the gutsiest decision in the company's history, selling off their traditional paper mills to really thrust Kimberly-Clark into consumer products like Huggies and Kleenex, directly competing with Procter & Gamble.
A huge bet.
Huge. And he did this not for personal glory, but for the company's enduring greatness. And it worked. They eventually beat the market by 4.1 times.
That's such a powerful contrast to what we often see or read about. So leaders like, I think you mentioned Stanley Galt at Rubbermaid, who was famously eye-centric, or maybe Al Dunlap, Scott Paper with all the loud self-promotion. They might be highly capable, maybe even brilliant, but their ambition is often for themselves first, not primarily for the company's enduring greatness beyond their tenure. Is that the level 4 distinction?
Exactly. Level 5 leaders are almost invisible in their ambition for themselves. It's all about the institution. Consider Coleman Mockler at Gillette. He fought off multiple hostile takeovers to protect the company's long-term future, even though he personally would have gained millions by just capitulating. Or David Maxwell at Fannie Mae. When the company was losing $1 million a day, he not only turned it around but made sure his successor was equally capable. He even returned a large retirement package to avoid any controversy that could jeopardize Fannie Mae's future. It was always about the institution, not their personal game or legacy.
It's truly about building something that will outlast you. They weren't trying to be larger-than-life heroes. They were, like you said, seemingly ordinary people quietly producing these extraordinary sustained results. So, okay, once you have that level 5 leader in place, what's their first move? Is it about crafting the perfect strategy, or is there something even more fundamental they prioritize?
That's a brilliant question because Collins found their initial focus wasn't on where to drive the bus, but who they invited on board first. This is the first who, then what principle. Good to great leaders first got the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. And then they figured out where to drive it. It radically shifts that conventional wisdom. You know, people are your most important asset. Collins says, no, the right people are your most important asset.
I remember the Fannie Mae example here again. David Maxwell, losing $1 million a day. The board desperately wanted a strategy, like what's the plan? But Maxwell's first act was to interview all the officers, asking them to really consider if they truly wanted to be part of this incredibly demanding challenge ahead. He focused on assembling the right team, getting the who right, before developing the vision or the strategy. That's so counterintuitive, especially when you're in crisis mode.
It truly is. But this first who approach has several critical benefits. One, it creates adaptability because people are on the bus for who else is on it, not just solely where it's going at that moment. If you need to change direction, the right people will stay. Two, it fosters self-motivated and self-managed teams. The right people don't need to be tightly managed. They're intrinsically motivated. And three, it really underlines that a great vision without great people to execute it is, well, pretty much irrelevant.
This is such a stark contrast to that genius with 1,000 helpers model we see so often, like Henry Singleton's Teledyne. It was this sprawling empire held together by his singular genius, but then it kind of crumbled after he left. Or Jack Heckard's drugstore empire, which also faltered without his personal guiding insight. When the genius leaves, the system collapses because it wasn't built to operate without them.
Precisely. And it's about being rigorous, not ruthless. That's a key distinction Collins makes. When Wells Fargo acquired Crocker Bank, yeah, they shed 1,600 Crocker managers on day one. But they also let go of some of their own Wells Fargo managers if the Crocker managers were actually better qualified.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Their standard was ferocious, but it was consistent. They just wanted the best people on the bus, period, regardless of where they came from originally.
Okay, so even with the right people on the bus, reality can be harsh, things go wrong. How do these good to great companies deal with that? Do they just put on a brave face, or is there a more brutal honesty involved.
Oh, they absolutely embrace brutal honesty. This leads to the Stockdale Paradox. It's named after Admiral James Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He survived by facing the brutal facts of his reality day in, day out, while simultaneously maintaining an unwavering faith that he would prevail in the end.
That's a powerful duality.
It is. It's about confronting the most brutal facts of your current reality head on, yet never losing faith that you will ultimately triumph.
It's so easy to just ignore what you don't like hearing, isn't it? Like the Kroger versus A&P example. Both were old grocery chains, both facing the shift to superstores. A&P apparently opened this experimental store, the Golden Key, found customers loved it, but then closed it because basically they didn't like the answers it gave. They stuck their head in the sand.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Kroger confronted the brutal fact that their old model grocery stores were going to become extinct. So they systematically rebuilt their entire system into superstores, eventually becoming the #1 grocery chain in America. They didn't deny reality. They used it as a catalyst for change.
So how do you create that climate where the truth, even the uncomfortable truth, is heard?
Well, Collins found the good to great leaders did a few key things. They lead with questions, not answers. They engage in vigorous dialogue and debate, not coercion. They conduct autopsies without blame, figure out what went wrong, not who to blame. And they build what Collins calls red flag mechanisms. These turn information into unignorable information. Like, imagine a customer short pay system like they had at Granite Rock. Customers could literally pay less if they felt the service wasn't up to par. That's an immediate, undeniable red flag about performance.
Okay, so you confront reality, you've got the right people. How do you focus all that energy? Is there like a one big thing that truly drives them?
That's where the hedgehog concept comes in. It's inspired by Isaiah Berlin's essay about foxes and hedgehogs. You know the saying. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing.
Right.
The hedgehog concept isn't a goal or a strategy in itself. It's a deep, simplifying insight that comes from the iterative intersection of 3 key circles. First, what you can be the best in the world at. And that's critical, not just what you want to be good at or what you are good at now, but what you can realistically be the best at.
Okay, best in the world.
Second, what drives your economic engine? Identifying the single denominator like profit per X or cash flow per X that has the greatest and most sustainable impact. And third, what you are deeply passionate about. What activities truly ignite your passion and the passion of your people?
So it's not about bravado or just wishful thinking. It's about piercing insight and maybe egoless clarity. Walgreens is a great example. Their hedgehog concept was basically being the best at convenient drugstores. That was their best in the world. And the economic engine was profit per customer visit. So they achieved this through like tight clustering of stores, sometimes 9 stores within a mile, and adding high margin services. Then they reinvested that cash to build even more convenient stores.
Exactly. And you contrast that with Eckerd, which was compulsively acquiring other chains without a really coherent concept of how to create sustainable growth or be the best.
Right, it lacked that core hedgehog idea.
Yeah. Wells Fargo pivoted from trying to be a global bank, which they realized they couldn't be the best at, to being the best at running a bank like a business, focused specifically on the Western U.S. And their economic driver became profit per employee. Abbott Labs, realizing it couldn't be the best overall pharmaceutical company, found its hedgehog in creating products that contribute to cost-effective healthcare. So they excelled in specific niches like hospital nutrition and diagnostic devices where they could be the best. It's this iterative process, asking questions, debating, analyzing data, doing those autopsies without blame until that deep understanding, that simple clarity emerges.
So for any of us building something, a team, a project, even just a personal goal, finding our own hedgehog, seems like it could really clarify where to focus our limited energy, right? Cut through the noise.
Absolutely. It provides tremendous focus.
Okay, so you know your hedgehog. How do you actually execute on it with that unwavering consistency? It sounds like it must take incredible discipline.
It does, but again, maybe not in the way you first think. It's not necessarily about a tyrannical, top-down disciplinarian. It's more about having disciplined people who engage in disciplined thought and take disciplined action. It's about creating freedom and responsibility, but within a framework that is then fanatically adhered to.
Like an airline pilot, maybe. They operate within very strict rules and systems, checklists, procedures. but they also have ultimate responsibility and make crucial decisions within that framework in the cockpit.
That's a great analogy. You want your pilot to be empowered, absolutely, but within very clear discipline boundaries. Carl Reichardt at Wells Fargo famously embodied this discipline by rinsing his own cottage cheese. It sounds silly, but it was symbolic.
What does that mean?
Well, he froze executive salaries, he shut the fancy executive dining room, sold off the corporate jets, banned expensive perks. He showed that the rigor and discipline applied first and foremost at the top. And this contrasted sharply with comparison companies where executives clung to their lavish perks even when the company was in crisis.
That sends a powerful message.
It really does. Nucor, operating in the brutally competitive steel industry, built a culture of discipline around aligning worker and management interests. Executives actually took bigger pay cuts during hard times than the frontline workers. They even printed all 7,000 employees' names in the annual report, fostering this sense of an egalitarian meritocracy.
And a critical part of this discipline is often what they choose not to do, right? The stop doing list. It's not just about what you relentlessly focus on.
That's a huge point, yes. The stop doing list is crucial. Darwin Smith at Kimberly-Clark, for instance, stopped providing annual Wall Street forecasts because he felt they encouraged too much short-term thinking. He also got rid of formal titles to reduce that feeling of class consciousness. This relentless focus on what not to do, especially stopping anything that falls outside the 3 circles of the Hedgehog Concept, is a key differentiator.
Okay, so if technology isn't the igniter, what role does it play? Once you have the right people, you're confronting the brutal facts, you found your Hedgehog Concept, and you have a culture of discipline. Where does tech fit in?
That's exactly when technology becomes an accelerator. It was never the primary cause of a transformation in any of the good-to-great companies. Instead, it amplified the momentum they had already built after the Hedgehog Concept was clearly understood, and they were executing with discipline. They were often pioneers, yes, but in applying carefully selected technologies that linked directly back to their Hedgehog Concept.
Okay, so for Walgreens, with its convenient drugstores, Hedgehog, that meant investing heavily in things like satellite communications and computer networks. They called it Intercom, linking all its stores in real time. It basically became like a giant web of a single corner pharmacy, all interconnected. It wasn't tech for tech's sake, it was tech specifically chosen to enhance convenience.
Precisely. Kroger used barcode scanners very early on to revolutionize inventory management. This freed up billions in working capital, which then funded their crucial transformation into superstores. Gillette used advanced laser welding for its shaving systems, apparently a technology normally reserved for things like heart pacemakers to protect its proprietary manufacturing and maintain its competitive edge in high-quality shaving.
So the key question wasn't, what's the cool new technology we should adopt?
No. The question was always, does this specific technology fit directly with our Hedgehog Concept? If the answer was yes, then they often became pioneers in applying it. If the answer was no, they might have decided they needed parity, or maybe that the technology was simply irrelevant to them. They remained calm and deliberate, not frantic, even when things like the internet bubble were exploding and crashing all around them. Walgreens' methodical approach to the internet while dot-coms were burning through cash is a great example.
So with all these principles in play, level 5, first 2, brutal facts, Hedgehog, discipline, technology accelerators. Does greatness happen in one fell swoop? Is there a miracle moment, or is it like a series of magic bullets?
This might be the most liberating finding of all. Transformations don't happen like that, not at all. Instead, Collins describes it as relentlessly pushing a giant, heavy flywheel. Imagine a huge metal disc mounted horizontally. You push, and it barely moves. You keep pushing, turn after turn. It starts to move a little faster. You keep pushing consistently in one direction. It builds momentum. Eventually, it builds so much momentum that it hits a point of breakthrough where the flywheel's own weight helps keep it spinning.
So no single defining action, no grand program, no one killer innovation.
Exactly. It was almost always a cumulative process. Good decisions, diligently executed, building one upon another, creating momentum over time. People often look at Walmart as an overnight success, right? But it was 20 years in the making before its big breakthrough really happened. Kimberly-Clark selling the mills was a huge, visible push on the flywheel, yes. But it required thousands more pushes over 2 decades before the world really recognized the scale of their transformation.
It's about that sustained effort. And that momentum, that flywheel effect, it must become infectious inside the company, right? When people start to see tangible accomplishments, however small at first, and they understand how these steps fit into an overall concept that actually works, they line up with enthusiasm.
Absolutely. It's understanding leading to action, step after step, turn after turn of the flywheel. People want to be part of something that's succeeding. And the opposite of the flywheel is what Collins calls the doom loop.
The doom loop.
Yeah,
Sounds bad.
it is. This is where the comparison companies often got stuck. They would lurch frantically from one new program to another, always looking for that magic bullet. They'd undergo constant restructurings, bring in new leaders who undid the work of the previous ones, or make big, misguided acquisitions in a desperate attempt to just jump directly to breakthrough, without building momentum first. Companies like Warner Lambert or R.J. Reynolds fell into this trap. They essentially bought their way to growth, hoping it would lead to greatness, but it never did. They kept losing precious momentum in the process.
So it disrupts the flywheel.
Completely. It stops the flywheel, maybe even tries to spin it in a different direction, losing all that built-up energy.
So wrapping this up, the good to great journey isn't about finding the one big thing overnight.
Not at all. It's about diligently and consistently applying these interconnected principles over a long period. It's a continuous process. Collins talks about being a clock builder, not just a time teller, building the system that endures. And for many of these companies, the story didn't even end there. It was about continuing to apply these same principles to move beyond good to great and become truly built to last.
Indeed. And, this book ultimately suggests that the search for greatness isn't necessarily harder or more painful than just settling for mediocrity. In fact, if you're engaged in work you love and deeply care about for whatever reason, then the question, why bother striving for greatness, almost becomes, well, a nonsense question, doesn't it? It feels like a natural outflow of deep passion and purpose, just wanting to make whatever you do the very best it can possibly be.
That's a great point. It reframes effort not as a burden, but as an expression of commitment.
So for you listening, whether you're building a company, leading a team, working in a nonprofit, or even just pursuing your own personal goals, these insights offer a really powerful framework. They can dramatically simplify your choices, I think, by providing clarity on what is truly vital and what is perhaps just noise, helping you focus your energy where it actually matters most.
And as Jim Collins often implies, the potential for level 5 leaders, for discovering your unique hedgehog, and for building a culture of discipline. It's all around us. It's not some mystical quality reserved for a chosen few. It's often simply a matter of knowing what to look for within ourselves and others, and then having the resolve to act on it, consistently, day in, day out, turn by turn on that flywheel.
So what stands out to you from this deep dive into good to great? We really hope this bookish dive has given you some powerful insights to reflect on and maybe even apply. If you enjoyed this summary and want more like it, please be sure to follow Bookish Dives wherever you get your audio content. And maybe tell a friend who might find it useful. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep striving for your own version of greatness.